Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. Today's video we're going to discuss this. This is Milwaukee's M18 circular saw 6.5. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dan Shannon. I enjoy woodworking as a hobby and being out in the shop. On this channel, dive deep into my shop as we explore tools and tool reviews, as well as chatting about everything related to woodworking. If this grabs you by the tool belt, please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Hello and welcome back to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. Today's video we're going to discuss this. This is Milwaukee's M18 18-volt circular saw, and this is their 6.5-inch blade. So basically when it comes to your blade size, that determines on how much wood you can cut or the material you can cut through. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. We're just going to unpack this a little bit. So we're going to go over the specs, so front to back, what this tool has, the features it has, and then we're going to jump into some hands-on. So I'm going to test it on some material, and then we'll do some final thoughts in the end just to gather up whether or not you should buy this tool or what this tool would be used for. So let's jump into that. So let's go into features. Okay, so the features on this tool, we're going to start at the front and then kind of work our way back. So on the front, you'll notice there's a couple dials on this tool, and these are for adjustments depending on what you're doing. So the first dial here is not really any use as of right now. It's actually used for a guide fence, so you slide a bar in and it runs along the side of the board, so as you're cutting it gives you a straight line. So that's not on here right now, but that's what this knob is for. It's to lock in your guide for cutting alongside the board. Next, you'll notice just up from that there's another dial, and that changes your angle, so your bevel as you're cutting. So right now it's at a perfect 90-degree cut, and if you wanted to do a 45, you would just loosen this, you would adjust it to the 45, which is all the way down. This doesn't have any stops either. Some of the products will have little stops that'll little notches where it kind of sits in slightly. My Rigid has that, but not all tools do. But once you get it to the 45, you just tighten it up, and as you can see there, that is your bevel. So depending on what you're cutting, whether you're doing some cornering for trim work, you might want that 45 bevel, or if you're doing a picture frame, there's multiple uses for using this 45. And then when you want to bring it back again, you just loosen it and move the plate back to the original. So now it's at 90 again, tighten it back up, and there's your perfect 90. And on the front, you'll notice too, there is some markings, so that gives you like a measuring tape basically built right onto the plate. And then same with on the side, you'll also see some measuring going on there. So as you're cutting, if you wanted to do, say, a notch out of a board, you can come in 3 inches, go over 3 inches. These would be your guides to give you that exact measurement, or you can use a tape measure and mark it off. Also, it's good to note where the blade will travel, so it has a little notch there, and that shows you as you're cutting the path that the blade will take when you're cutting. So that's really good to see that as well. Okay, as we move from the front towards the middle, you'll notice there is a really nice grip here. a knob, so as you're cutting your board, you have something to stabilize the saw, you know, as you're keeping it on the board. Especially if plywood, if you're running a sheet of plywood, it's great to have that extra so the saw doesn't wander. You can just grab a hold of it and keep it on target. You'll also notice on the back side of that, there's a tool, and this tool is an Allen key, and it's for removing your blade. So I like when manufacturers keep an Allen key, keep that tool right on your actual cordless tool, so that when it comes time to change the blade, grab it, ready to go. And then from there, you'll notice there's a lock and unlock right next to the trigger. So you have your trigger just below that, and then there's the lock and unlock. So you have to push this down in order to use it. So it's basically a safety that keeps it locked full time until you pull it down towards the trigger, so towards the ground, and then pulling the trigger. That will give you your power. Without that, the trigger is always locked. Some of them have a switch that goes back and forth. Other ones just have a little rocker on this that push it downward and release the trigger. So that's a great safety. A lot of times if you have the saw in a tool bag, you could have other screwdrivers, hammers, different things, and they might be able to rub up against that trigger by accident and turn the saw on. So I'm really glad that that safety feature is there. All right, so as we go towards the middle as well, you notice there's a little black button in between, and that is your lock for your blade. So that keeps your arbor from turning. So when you go to take the blade off, I'll remove the battery right now. So as you're going to remove the blade, you would take your Allen key, and then you would push on that front button. And as you can see here, so I'll put the Allen key on, press the button in. You can tell that it's not moving. Without the button, it will move fairly easy. So it just keeps the arbor, the inside bolt, from turning, and allows you to loosen the arbor and take that off and put on a new blade. And when you're changing the blade, it's good to note, since we're talking about that, you can remove the guard, bring it up like that to expose the blade. So once you loosen it, you can easily get the blade off, because this guard will be in the way of you taking the blade out the base. So that's another good thing to note. So that's what that black knob is for, is to keep the blade still. So as we move a little further on the tool, you'll notice a couple other features. I did mention this guard that protects your hand from the blade. And a lot of times when you're cutting, say, into plywood, sometimes this lip will grab on the plywood itself and kind of snag. So you always want to bring this back slightly, and usually your hand's back here, so you'd bring it back slightly, start into the product, and then gently let it back. So once again, it can jam up on you, but it is a great safety. Protects, especially if you're storing it. As you can see, the teeth aren't biting into the countertop here, so it's great feature to have on the tool. And that's pretty much standard. All circular saw have that guard, unless it broke off at some point. Then on the back, you'll notice there is a dust collection attachment, so you can take your shop vac and clip it on there. If you're inside, you want to create a lot of dust. I'm outside usually when I use this. Sometimes I'm in the shop, and I can hook a dust collection system up to it. But for the most part, I don't generally bother. But I mean, why not? If it's there and you have a hose that can clip on. All right, so on the back side, you'll notice you have your motor, and then there's another adjustment handle. So this adjustment handle sets the depth of your blade. So if you're cutting, as you can notice right now, it is full depth, so you're getting all the material. And if you're cutting, say, a 1x3 or a 1/2 inch, you don't want the full blade exposed. It's too much. You're going to want to push this down. That releases this bottom plate. As you can see, it will drop down, and your adjustment for that is on this side. So I would recommend, if you're coming into a board, and I'll show that on the hands-on, you raise your guard, you bring it down to where it needs to be, and then of course tighten this back dial. So once that's where it needs to be, you just tighten that back up, and your depth is set for the bottom plate. All right, so as we go from there, I'm just noticing there's not too much more. You have your cradle on the back, your mounting shoe for your battery, and like most saws, you can get different battery packs. This one here is the M18 XC 5.0, and this is their red lithium version of battery, and you can get different sizes. So all the 5.0 means is it's a bigger battery. You can get a 2, 6, 8. I mean, they're quite large, the bigger ones. For rigid, they make 12 amp hour. So it's great to have that option. And also just remember, it adds weight to your tool. So the bigger the battery, obviously you're going to get longer run time. You're also going to get more weight. So it's preference how much you want to use your saw and how much run time you need for the job. So that just goes on, slides on very easy, locks in place, and then you're up and running. So you just got to push this down and then pull the trigger, and you have full power. That's just like that. That's that easy. There is nothing else on the saw that I can mention for features. So we're going to jump into hands-on. Going to get a couple boards, and we're going to make sure this can cut well for these boards. So let's jump into the hands-on. Okay, so we are starting the hands-on of this circular saw. So I have a couple boards here. I have your standard flooring that would be cut. So this would be like a 4 by 1/2 inch. And then I have a 2 by 6 to cut. So really, if you're in the market for framing or doing decks, staircases, walls, 2 by 4, 2 by 6, that type of thing. We just want to make sure that this saw can actually cut this to give you some options for buying. So will it cut through this flooring? We'll go ahead and do that. So I have a speed square, just give you a straight edge. You don't have to use it if you are really good, but I tend to like use the speed square just to give me that straight edge for the saw to go alongside of. So I'm going to loosen these clamps a little bit, give myself a bit longer of a board to cut, tighten these clamps back up. And then put my speed square on. So I really recommend definitely using the speed square just to give yourself a great straight edge to work with. So before we start, I want to make sure my depth is good on the saw. So you just bring your saw to the end, raise up your guard, and then have a look-see on the end. This is obviously overkill, so I'm going to loosen that back knob that I mentioned. Raise the plate down, and then lock it back in place. And then you double check your depth, and then that seems to be really good. So I can go ahead and cut this board. All right, so let's fire on the saw and cut this board. But before I do that, I'm missing two safety things, some glasses and my headphones. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those first. Always safety first. Sometimes I know you're in a shop, you get busy and you forget, but it is good to note safety. I know my dad and myself, when I was younger, we used to watch Your Workshop rather, with Norm Abram, and he always talked about safety glasses and headphones when you're working with tools. So as Norm Abram used to say on the New Yankee Workshop, don't forget to wear these safety glasses and headphones when working with tools. And a lot of times you forget, busy in a shop, you get a lot going on, you forget to grab your eye protection or your ears. And I, even myself sometimes, as I get busy, forget, but just make sure you always wear your eye protection and your headphones. Just a little tip. All right, so let's start into this cut. Got my speed square. So I'll do one more pass. So you notice there on the end, I had the guard. There wasn't much material. I was cutting off the end, and my guard on the bottom caught a little bit. So you always got to watch for that. Usually there's a thicker piece on the end, so you don't really have to worry about that. But the odd time, if you feel the saw kind of binding up a little bit, it's usually this guard here. So you just got to grab it with the other hand and move it a little bit forward and continue your cut. So, all right, so let's go from this board and we'll jump into the 2x6, see if that can cut just fine. We'll have to change our depth of the blade because this was a very thin board, and of course we're going from thinner to a thicker board, so we want to make sure our depth is set. All right, so let's jump into that. Okay, so I have my 2x6, I have it clamped down, and we're just going to trim a piece off the end. So what I need to do first is set my depth. As you can tell, if you look at the end, it will just barely cut through this board, so that is enough depth, but I'm going to do a little bit more just to be on the safe side. Lock it in place, and then of course double check to make sure that your depth is good. And once you see that and you know that the blade will cut through, you don't need much, just the carbide sticking through, maybe a little bit more. You don't have to get too carried away. It's actually easier on the saw, cutting through a little less than the entire blade sticking way out. And then you don't also have the edging cut into your grain on the base. So a little tip there. Yeah, let's jump into this. So we'll cut the end off and see how this saw performs. Oh, I forgot one thing, my headphones. All right, let's start into it. All right, first cut. Let's do another cut. All right. So there's two examples of some boards you would cut. 2x6, 2x4, flooring. Sheet of plywood would be similar to the thickness of this board here. You know, 1/2 inch, tongue groove, you know, OSB, that type of thing. So let's jump into some final thoughts on this circular saw. Okay, so some final thoughts on this circular saw. Would I buy it for myself? The answer is no. Is it capable? Does it do everything that I've shown you? Yes, it does. It cuts perfectly well. I would upgrade, however, the blade on it. I would buy a Diablo or a Freud blade. I wouldn't use the blade that came with it. So I definitely upgrade the blade just for quality and cutting performance. But you've seen today, I was able to cut through a 2x6. I was able to cut through some flooring. For the average person, this would handle their needs just fine. Now, the issue is, for me, obviously this is a Milwaukee tool. I got it borrowed from a friend of mine, Revew, so showed it to him for lending this tool. But the reason why I would not buy this tool for myself personally is I need a little bit extra cutting. So what I mean by that is both these tools are very similar. They look very similar, and a lot of the features are very similar. But the big difference is this is 7 1/4 and this is 6 1/2. This also has a bigger motor. It can cut quite a bit more. It's 5400 is the, I'll double check that, 5600 resolutions per minute, and this one is only 3500. So that is the difference between these two tools, is the blade height and also the motor power. So the reason why this wouldn't work for me, and maybe you're in this category as well, if you're cutting 4x4s, any bigger material, you need that extra blade that you can see on the machines. If I hold them side by side, you can definitely see there is a difference in the depth just because they're different size blades. Now, I should say, how many times have I cut a 4x4? Not too often. So is this overkill for maybe yourself? It might be if you're not cutting 4x4s too often. This is similar weight at the end of the day, so you're not really losing if you buy one versus the other for weight. But that would be the main thing that I wouldn't buy this saw, is you know, having a little bit more diversity for cuts. But this saw is an everyday hands-on champ. Like you can put a lot at it, it will cut, it will cut. I know a bunch of people that have these Milwaukee tools, and they will cut all day long. Great product, neck and neck. Both these tools hold their own ground. At the end of the day, it is preference for yourself when it comes to your tool brand. Obviously, I'm more in the rigid lineup. As you can see behind me, there's more orange than anything else. So because of that, I have the batteries, I have the chargers, I have all that goes along with it. So it makes more sense for me to jump into the rigid circular saw, beside that main point that I mentioned with the blade size. But for the average person, we'll jump back into the main conversation, which is this circular saw. The average person that is in the Milwaukee lineup, you do have the batteries. You do use Milwaukee all the time for your cordless. Perfect tool, perfect saw. It'll cut like a champ. You know, is there any cons to it? You know, I wish when I was changing the bevel on it, there would be little notches to lock it into the 45, so you knew exactly where that 45 was. But that's a little nitpick. That's not really any big deal. So basically, at the end of the day, would this serve me fine in cutting? Yes. I didn't feel the engine bog out at all. You heard it cut the 2x6 with ease. You heard it cut the flooring. So if you're building decks, staircases, ripping sheets of plywood, you know, this saw would handle just fine. And it's a great asset for your tool collection. They do have a M18 fuel now, I believe. So that's just a better motor. You know, of course, technology, they're always getting better and better. So anyways, that is my verdict on this tool. Thanks for watching today's video. And just like I say in all my videos, it doesn't matter how big or how small your shop is, just get out and enjoy it. It doesn't matter what tool brand you have. You know, we were talking about Milwaukee today, rigid a little bit. It doesn't really matter what you have. Just get out in your shop and enjoy your time. So thanks for watching today, and don't forget to click on that subscribe button if you want to be part of the Shop Talk family. We'd love to have you on board, and please give me a thumbs up. And if you have any comments towards maybe this tool or maybe this rigid tool here, I do have a video review of the circular saw, so if you're not sure which one you'd rather, you can watch that on my channel. So thanks again, and have yourself a great day. See you on the next one.